this week's program. We're going to be looking at a saffron operation. We're also going to be catching up with a dairy farmer, and Rural Women New Zealand will be telling us what they are up to. But in just a moment, we'll be talking soil and seminars. 22nd, 23rd of June, two very big days for everybody who wants to know how to get production up and save money and look after their soils.
That's right, Rob. Yeah, we're doing a conference in the event centre in Ashburton, and we've got 9 speakers coming from overseas and 5 farmers.
So what's your main focus?
On how to lift production on the products, the conventional products that they're actually using now, but we just look at it at a different priority. Because
you're looking at fertiliser, there's new rules and regulations coming in, and the farmers need to know what's happening.
Yes, we're looking more on how to increase their production by not over-fertilising. Yeah. So
because you've got some excellent speakers. Who's talking about fertiliser, for example?
We've got Neil Kinsey talking about nitrogen and the forgotten element, magnesium, around the world. They'll all touch on fertiliser, but they've got their own little subjects of how to do it, and when not to use things and when to use things.
Which is interesting, because a lot of people still fertilise because they think they need to, when in fact they don't do any soil tests.
Yeah, they think more is better, but it's not the way to do it. Once you've got enough, you've got to move on to the next limiting factor.
And these guys are going to be able to explain, because superphosphate may not be the end all.
No, phosphate is part of the equation, but if you've got enough, why keep putting it on when you could lift your yields by putting other products on?
Water. Water's an interesting one, because you said at some stage that waters can be too pure.
Yeah, Bill Brush, he's going to be talking how he analyses water, and if it's too pure, it will actually strip out calcium out of the soil, and by fertilising correctly, you'll be able to use less water, because the soil will get a better water retention. It will hold the water a lot better. So our cropping guys are finding that they're irrigating less, and they don't need to irrigate as much.
Which is amazing, because it's very expensive to irrigate, $1,500 a day for some people.
Yes, and you know, if you overwater or underwater, you're going to affect your yield. So we've got to keep an eye on that as well.
So who else is speaking? Because you've got a range of people over the 2 days.
We've got Neil Kinsey on nitrogen and magnesium, Bill Brush on water, why you analyse it to see what it's doing to the nutrients in the soil. We've got Aaron Willard on soil mapping, on variable rate fertiliser, how you increase your yields by doing that. Tim Rombart, who's a scientist, on some data out of the US. Bob Perry, who has got a soil lab, so he's going to talk about pH. Nick Van Ruin from South Africa, he's going to tell you when to and not to use biologicals. David Nielsen, he'll tell you when you can add other products, but you've got to get the basics right. And then we've got Peter Norwood, who's going to look at the soils and tell you what problems you'll have with animal health from the soils.
So that's a very impressive lineup.
Yes, and some of these guys have been doing it for 40 plus years, and they've been doing it all around the world. So it works there, it works here.
So obviously you're going to be taking registrations now?
Yes.
How do people get in touch with you?
They can go on our website, www.wag.co.nz. It's got the registration, the program, and who's speaking, and we've also got Brian Lahore, who's going to open it. Sir Brian?
Sir Brian?
Yeah, Sir Brian.
Well, there you are.
Yes.
I'm really intrigued by the fact that magnesium is suddenly becoming a sort of a lost soul who's coming back into the fold.
Well, you need, the farmers are getting a lot of pressure on them for the overuse of nitrogen, but if you get your calcium and magnesium levels right, you'll use less nitrogen, so you're going to get a better response from applying your nitrogen. Plus you need it to get phosphate into the plant as well, plus to get chlorophyll into the plant.
But there's those who would suggest, Bruce, that there's a lot of fertiliser that sits in the soil and gets locked in and it can't release.
That's right, and that's why you've got to get your calcium and magnesium levels correct, and then you'll start releasing a lot of those minerals tied up in the soil.
And then, of course, you look at irrigation and whether that locks up the iron. It's a science, isn't it?
It is, and that's where Bill Brush will tell you why you've got to analyse your water to see whether you're putting some of those things on which are not helping at the other end.
So the water that the guys are pumping, and I say guys generically, I mean,
yes.
you know, I'm not that they're pumping out of the ground really needs to be tested to see.
Yeah, you've got to know whether you've got iron in it or whatever, which could be tying up your copper and things like that. Yeah.
And I'm really still intrigued by the fact that by looking at your fertiliser regime, you can actually work out whether you need to water more or less.
By getting your calcium magnesiums right and your zincs, you'll actually use less water than what a lot of guys are now. So that's what our dairy farmers and our cropping guys are finding, that they're actually using less water. And
this is obviously done by trials. I mean, people have been able to say, look at this.
Yeah, they tell by the pumping less, so their power bills aren't as much. So,
and a penny saved versus a penny earned.
Yeah, it comes back to the pocket, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yes.
So let's just recap. Basically, it's available. The seminar's available for anyone who wants to come along.
Yeah, so farmers, anybody. Yeah, it's open to the public. Yeah.
But they do need to register.
Do need to register. We've got an early bird registration which cuts off on the 22nd of May. So for the Scotchmen, get in early.
And there's a few of those.
Yes, there is, Rob.
Well, we're talking about saving money, aren't we?
Yes.
By reducing fertiliser, reducing the amount of water.
Yep.
And it's the 22nd and 23rd of June.
That's right.
Now, those who aren't able to make it, you'll work out a system between now and then to get information out, I guess.
Yeah, hopefully we're going to be videoing all the speakers so they'll be able to buy whatever's, we'll have them all individually done, yeah.
Ashburton Conference Centre, which we used to call as the new pub, which is 40 years old now. It's still known as a new pub down there, you realise that, don't you?
No.
So it's the conference centre?
Yeah, on Will Street.
Yep.
Yes.
So it's not the actual Hotel Ashburton?
No, it's in the event centre on Will Street. Yes.
See, I would have turned up at the wrong place and I would have missed out.
Yeah, you would have been drinking by yourself, Rob.
So the 22nd and 23rd of June,
yes.
Early bird registrations need to be in by...
The 22nd of May.
22nd of May, that's
Yep.
not very far away.
No.
Brilliant.
Yep.
All the very best for that.
Thanks, Rob.
And we'll keep in touch and yeah,
Yep.
I mean, with that sort of lineup, it's going to be very, very interesting. So well done for
Yep.
bringing everybody together.
Yeah, thanks.
The website is on screen, but it's, if you just go www.ag.
.co.nz.
Brilliant.
And we better thank our sponsors too.
Who are?
Sabelco New Zealand, Golden Bay Dolomite, Full Circle Nutrition NZ, Agriganics. You've got me thinking here, Rob.
That's right.
Wrightson's, ANZ, Macmillan Laboratories, and R&R Haulage.
Brilliant.
Yep.
And Mrs. Marketing will no doubt be tapping them on the shoulder.
Yes.
Bruce, thank you very
Yep.
much indeed. Got more for you on The Land straight after the break.
Be Active begins here in the cold, clean, unpolluted southern oceans of New Zealand. Be Active amino acid biostimulant, natural, 100% pure, manufactured from healthy deep sea fish from sustainable New Zealand fisheries. New Zealand's Be Active amino acid biostimulant, the way the world is growing. Working with nature, good for the plant, good for the planet. Now that's growing for good.
We'll get you thinking, think water.
I think it's all working well, Jack.
My thoughts exactly.
We'll get you thinking, think water.
This is exactly what you need.
I think that'll do the trick.
We'll get you thinking, think water.
It's all looking good. Did you bring the sauce? I can't think of everything.
Get you thinking, think water.
For real ideas and real solutions, just think water.
I've been reporting on farming matters on the radio and newspapers and on television for 40 or so years, but communication, like farming, has moved on. So we've come up with On the Land, online and through YouTube on any screen, anytime and anywhere. Just push play and see and hear what's happening today in our rural community. You'll learn and be informed about the latest and best information farming matters. On the Land, bringing farming information into the 21st century. So join us on our website, ontheland.co.nz.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
Welcome back to On the Land, and connecting is very, very important. We're going to connect you with horticulture in just a moment. Very good rain.
Marvellous rain. Not too late for horticulturalists. The reason being is that a season like we've just had has been really challenging. Early November, December, quite cold. Hot summer, but the horticulturists can manage their water. So they've had some wonderful crops out of it. Some of them have been affected by frost, but in general, the crops have come off very, very well. The quality is extremely high. Just talking to some potato growers in South Canterbury the other day, in fact I was watching them harvesting. The potatoes, you could come out and put them on a plate and eat them. They were just clean, they were hard, they were lovely skinned and looking really good. Last year they were mush and we lost hundreds and hundreds of tonnes of potatoes due to the wet conditions previous to harvest. So it's been great. The onion guys, 3 to 4 really nice brown skins on the onion, nice and firm onions going to Europe, going to Japan. Unfortunately, European prices are a bit soft, but having said that, we're still shipping away quality, and that's what we've got to continue to do to keep our markets. The soft fruit guys, the raspberries, strawberries, had a good season and had quite a long season in terms of strawberries. And they were there for Christmas, so that was challenging, but they were there and it was good for the consumer as also the grower. Apples are going off well in the Nelson and Hawke's Bay districts. Nice colour, good size, challenging markets, but there's some contracts that back-to-back contracts that are now around in horticulture and a lot of crops. They are really starting to make some true money. So good work.
It's their turn.
It is their turn, Rob. Having said that, they've worked really hard on trying to get these back-to-back contracts. In other words, you won't get top price, you won't get bottom price, you'll get a price that everybody can make some money out of, and it's guaranteed and it comes back into you. So it's the way forward, I believe.
It's taking the shoulders out.
Yeah, taking some of the shoulders out, and other crops are starting to realise this. So long-term contracts or long-term commitments with financial contracts adjusted every year to the market, and a grower can say yay or nay. Most of them are saying yay because they actually can make some money. The good farmers will always make money.
I guess that also means that they can go to their bankers and everybody else and say, well, we can tell you what our budget is going to be.
Absolutely. It's interesting you should say that, Rob, because I've had over the last 2 or 3 weeks, bankers actually ring me and say, now, are you sure about these contracts? And I say, look, they're written down, they're signed up. Sure, there's going to be some variances, but it's going to give, we want crops and they take a long time to grow. You plant them, you grow them. It might be 9 months before you get the produce. It could be 3 years before you get the produce. So there's got to be some long-term longevity about the business in general. And it's a relationship. Good communications equals a relationship. And that's what horticulture is all about.
Grapes, how are the grapes looking?
Well, the grapes have been good, but a lot of the vineyards, especially in the South Island, have been affected by frost. Having said that, there are pockets that haven't been. And quality is good, quantity is down because of the frost. But, well, you couldn't have got a better autumn for harvesting grapes. The grape harvest is over. And I would say the guys will be smiling. And probably smiling for another reason too, Rob, in that there is less tonnage this year than last year. Mm-hmm. It'll just keep the measure of what's going to come forward in terms of litres in the marketplace. And it means then that we could almost start to talk about, hey, we're not quite meeting our markets, which means the value will go up. So actually, it really has been a good year for viticulture.
Because I was going to say that, people have got a contract to produce whatever.
Yep.
And if they're not able to, does that become a minefield?
Well, yeah, it can be. It can be, especially the big boys that have got big tonnages to bring in and haven't got them there to do that, and they've got markets to meet. They'll buy product somewhere. It won't necessarily be the product they really would like, but they'll cut and paste their markets, and they'll fit the glove. The glove will fit the hand in the end, I'm sure.
Well, I'm hoping so, being a bit of a connoisseur, end user, as it were. Herbicides, that I guess it's time to start thinking about them.
It is time to start thinking about it, but it's certainly not time to actually, in horticultural crops, to apply them. Because of the longer dry autumn, plants are hanging on, and there's a little bit more green tissue and green shoots out there that normally would have now frosted off or been started to break down, what we call senesce, a little bit early. Probably about, I always say, the 9th of April is about the time senescence really starts, and by the end of April you can get stuck in with your herbicides. Well, I'm saying this year, no, leave it another month, because those plants are still another month. Let them senesce properly, get them into a dormant situation, and then hit them with whatever needs to be applied to it to combat the spectrum of weeds that are out there. And the later you can do that, and I'm talking probably late May, early June, where you've really got the helping hand of frost, because frost obviously knocked the plant around, well, knocked the weed around, but the weed's trying to survive, so it brings the herbicide in more. So let that process start to happen. At the moment it's been too warm for that to happen. So senescence needs to be a little bit further down the track yet, and be a little bit patient, maybe go and have a break, go and have a week off.
Go and play golf.
I mean, this rain's been good because it's been quite general. It's been quite slow in most places. It's been quite heavy, but it's gone into the ground, and it's not going to do anything for growth or anything for the bush herb farmer, but it's going to rehydrate that very, very dry soil, and it's extremely dry, and it hasn't been resolved in this rain. We need a lot more yet.
Absolutely, because I would have thought that if you get it while it's still hot and the plant's thirsty, it'll suck it up.
Yeah, it does, but it also helps to develop those little root hairs that in the end pick up the nutrition. That's one of the other things, the benefit of the rain we've got now, and I'm sure we've lost some of our some of our fertilisers. We applied them in our normal time, February, March in horticultural crops, and we've had to wait and wait and wait for the general irrigation. I mean, main irrigation is drip lines, and it's quite specific. When you apply fertiliser, you need the ground to be moist all over. So that'll hopefully pick up a little bit of that fertiliser and make that start to work, and we'll benefit that in the springtime.
Of course, nature's likely to make it so that you can't get onto the paddocks because it's so wet.
Yeah, well, you know, no matter where you are in New Zealand, you're going to get the same amount of rainfall per annum. It's just when it comes, and at the moment we're dry. So are we going to have a really wet, maybe July, August? If so, let's get the cultural things done before that happens, and that's a challenge in itself.
But looking back over the season, most horticultural farmers will be very happy?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, very happy, and they're now starting to reap the benefit. I mean, the dollars continues to be a challenge.
Well, it always will be. It has been for years.
It always will be, and they've learned how to manage with that. And it's about those contracts, it's about quality, and they've delivered on both for this last season. I think it's been pretty blooming good, Rob.
From now on, of course, there's no rest because they're starting to work on next season.
Yeah, absolutely, very much so. A lot of planning going on. What are the markets really going to be like? Europe's still going to be tight. Russia, Mr. Putin's still going to carry on with playing his games, and it's really, really affecting fruit and vegetables in the greater part of Europe, which has a paramount effect on us. So we've got to go to other countries like John Kelly's doing right now to make sure we are spreading our export base for our horticultural products for us to get our 10 billion by 2020.
Seriously, does the Prime Minister's visit to another country really make that much difference?
Oh, I think any Prime Minister that goes to the high leadership in a country and is able to have dialogue, that's relationships, and it might not be beneficial, that particular visit, but in time it could create, I mean, if we can get all those Arab states, and Saudi Arabia obviously at the moment is the difficult one, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and I concur with those reasons. I don't want to see gender being mucked around with, or apartheid like we had in South Africa years ago. Having said that, you know, continued communication will get there, and we need to have exports going out. So we need to be talking to these countries. Whether we're successful now or successful in 5 years' time, who knows? But let's be rest assured we'll be successful at some stage.
Jim, thank you very much, as always. In just a moment, we'll be talking saffron. How did you end up growing saffron?
Well, it's a crop that you can grow without, it's not like lettuces and that you have to take fresh to the market. This will keep, it will keep for 10 years plus, so long as it's kept in a cool, dark place.
This is your second establishment, you've been growing it for a while.
We've been growing it for 20 years, Rob, 20 years. So And then when we moved here about 5 years ago, we brought saffron with us. We're certified organic, and we have a HACCP program, which is a food safety program with the saffron.
Somebody from overseas said that you're doing very, very well.
Yes, we had a lovely chap from Spain. He's a scientist, and he made the standards for ISO 3632 for saffron in the world. And he tested our saffron from here, and it came out 270, where it averages 230 to 240. So we're right up there with saffron. Our quality is exceptional in New Zealand.
So what's the secret to our really good quality? Is it climate, or is it the soils?
A combination of both, and also the fact that we do fertilise our saffron. So it's consistent, because you want that quality year after year, and that's the secret, is to actually keep it well fertilised, keep it well fed.
So being organic, what are you using for fertiliser?
Yeah, we use fish fertiliser that's certified organic. So and we also have certified compost that we put on the beds as well, and that helps it.
Is it an easy crop to manage?
It is. I mean, your busy times are November and December. That's when you can dig your crop up if it's getting crowded and replant it. And then your other busy time is April, where that's when you've got the harvest.
So they reproduce themselves?
They do. You get about 6 cormlets per year from one corm that you've planted, from a medium-sized corm that's been planted.
How often do you have to split them up?
Usually every 4 years we dig the crop up and extend it, and also if any growers want to come on board, then we sell the corms off as well to them.
The crops look really, really clean. What do you do for weed control?
Yes, we hand weed because we're certified organic, but there is a certified organic weed spray that we do use in summer once we've cleared the weeds off, but we might only use that once, maybe twice in the summer period. But this summer's been so hot, we haven't had the weeds, so they haven't been a problem.
So what sort of conditions are ideal and that they really like?
It likes it really hot in summer, so unfortunately for the farmers, it's been a great year for saffron though with the drought, and in winter it likes it cold. So it likes about 27 degrees, 10 days of 27 degrees in summer for the saffron. They love that, they love the heat, love being baked.
World history-wise, it's sort of biblical really, isn't it?
It is. It's actually 7,000 BC, so it goes right back to then. So it is very much so.
It's been used for medicines and dyes for thousands and thousands of years.
Years and years ago, of course, they used it for any ailment that there might be. And even midwives used it actually to administer to the women when they're in labour, because it helped with the spasms of the muscles and it helped relieve the pain for them.
So it's a relaxant?
It's got many medicinal properties to it. There's research at the moment going on in Australia, and that paper should be finished at the end of this year for the degenerative eye disease, and that's actually, they've got 23 patients that they've tested it on, and it's reversing it in the 23.
Has there been any other research like cancer or whatever?
It's been very promising for cancer. Also chemotherapy, it halves the side effects by half. Also the scientists from Spain, they're researching MS at the moment, and he said that's looking very promising as well. So it has got a lot of medicinal properties to it, so it's not just for the food.
So obviously food is another aspect that, in fact, that's where most people would know of saffron from.
Food, I mean, you can add it to practically any dish. Of course, paella is the one that everybody, associates with saffron, but it's used in Indian cooking. They use it usually in every dish that they do.
You even make bread.
We did today, just for you, Rob.
And it's interesting that top chefs from around the world are using your saffron.
Yes, they are. Yes. We've also got it into two different restaurants, which is Roots in Littleton. They are using it, and they've got Matt Lambert coming out first week in May, and he'll be using it then as well. So also the Black Estate, which is just down the road, lovely place to go and have a meal, beautiful views. They actually use it, and they actually do stock our saffron as well. And Gracebrook and Emberley also have it.
So let's talk about your markets. It's mainly export?
It is, yes. Most of it is exported to Australia. Previous to this, we did export to the USA and Germany.
It looks as though it's very labour intensive.
It's not too bad actually, no. I mean, you just go out early morning. We usually start at 7:30 in the morning and we pick all the flowers, and they're closed. Ideally, you pick the flowers when they're closed. When they're closed and you've got the stigmas sticking up from the top of the petals, you know you've got good saffron and you get good trumpets at the end. So, and then after that we just process it, which is just taking the 3 red stigmas out, and that's a nice sit-down job.
You leave the stamens and the petals, you don't use them at all.
No, the stamens at the moment, I mean, we are looking to the future and looking at what we can do with the petals and also with the stamens.
Cheryl, there seems to be a lot of waste.
Yes, and if we can utilise, you know, that, we certainly will. That's what we are looking into at the present time as well.
You only get to harvest it once a year.
Yes, you do. That harvest runs for about 4 to 6 weeks.
So it's a big future for it.
There is.
Health food, it's medicinal, it's just about everything you could ever ask for.
Yes, it is. It is. It's very good for you.
And in fact, they have about 40 contract growers so that they can meet their export demands. After the break, we're talking Rural Women, New Zealand.
Be Active begins here in the cold, clean, unpolluted southern oceans of New Zealand. Be Active amino acid biostimulant, natural, 100% pure, manufactured from healthy deep sea fish from sustainable New Zealand fisheries. New Zealand's Be Active amino acid biostimulant, the way the world is growing. Working with nature, good for the plant, good for the planet. Now that's growing for good.
We'll get you thinking, think water.
I think it's all working well, Jack.
My thoughts exactly.
We'll get you thinking, think water.
This is exactly what you need.
I think that'll do the trick.
We'll get you thinking, think water.
It's all looking good. Did you bring the sauce? I can't think of everything.
Get you thinking, think water.
For real ideas and real solutions, just think water.
I've been reporting on farming matters on the radio and newspapers and on television for 40 or so years, but communication, like farming, has moved on. So we've come up with On the Land, online and through YouTube on any screen, anytime and anywhere. Just push play and see and hear what's happening today in our rural community. You'll learn and be informed about the latest and best information farming matters. On the Land, bringing farming information into the 21st century. So join us on our website, ontheland.co.nz.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
Welcome back to On the Land. In just a moment we'll be talking Rural Women, New Zealand. You've got a project.
We have. We've joined again with Hewlett-Packard, as we did last year, to have a bit of a competition for rural schools to enter, and with the hope of getting a share of $20,000 worth of new technology for their school.
About 20,000 reasons why they should.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many schools out there who really want to do more than they currently can, and they just hampered because they haven't got the technology or the skills, or there's something holding them back. So this is a great project, and Hewlett-Packard have funded that, and we're helping them along with it. And so we're encouraging all schools, you know, to get out there and put an application in and show us, you know, why you need it. What are the problems that you have in your school about, you know, computer technology? What would you do if you could? You know, if all things were equal and you had everything you need, what could you do? What benefit would it be to the school, to the children, and possibly even to the wider community?
So who are you aiming it at? Who is it who fills in the form?
These are for primary schools, small rural schools of probably under 300 students, and in really rural locations who are struggling along with technology and need a bit of a helping hand. And it doesn't need to be just about, you know, do I need a new computer or anything like that. It can be things like software, it can be connectivity, because we know a lot of schools out there, although the government had this great scheme and got fibre optic to the schools, it only got it to the school gate. And a lot of schools haven't been able to bring it inside the gate yet. So, you know, that's an area that Hewlett-Packard can help with in this project, as well as actually just getting them connected and schooling them up and showing them what potentially is available to them.
Because it'll be a minefield for some people.
Well, it is, and I think some schools struggle because they don't always have the IT skills within their staff, because they haven't had the equipment, so they haven't had the need to use it. So it's kind of, they all catch-22.
I was actually just thinking, Kerry, there's probably students who know more than some of the teachers.
Oh, and some of their parents, absolutely. And I think it's really important for our children, because increasingly, you know, they're working in a more technological age, and we've got to prepare them for the world they're working in. I recently heard a great presentation about the advance of technology, and you know, you get floored by statistics like, you know, if Facebook were a country, it would be the 3rd largest country in the world. And if you're studying a degree and you're in your 3rd year, what you learned in your 1st year is now out of date. So the pace of change in technology is increasingly getting quicker and quicker. So our children really need to be on board with this, and it's really important that our rural children aren't disadvantaged because they haven't got technology and they've got problems getting connectivity and onto the internet. So this is why this project's so important for rural children.
You as a mother would know full well that children don't have an option of having a computer or not now.
No, they don't, and increasingly schools are making the computer or a device of some form actually compulsory. You know, there are schools that are moving to full digitalised learning, and I know my own children at the high school they're at, their aim is that by 2017 every student will have their own device. Now what that means obviously is that there's an impact on the family for having to provide all those devices, but also when they come home to do their homework, you need that kind of technology at home as well. You need internet, you need wireless at home. So it's becoming more and more important for rural families as well to have the rural broadband and connectivity and be able to support the children with their learning.
There'd be quite a bit of noise if you had 3 children who had to share one computer at home.
Well, it wouldn't work really. Let's be honest, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. No. So they do have their own, and you know, it does put a load back on parents as the children grow, and that, you know, every couple of years you've got to upgrade the equipment, because you can't just hand down a computer to someone else because it's out of date. So yeah, it's an impact on children and their families. So, and also, you know, if the school's using different software, for example, the school might be Apple, Mac, and at home you're Windows. So, you know, there's all those sorts of compatibility things, and kids are using software that mum and dad have never seen before. So, you know, this is where this kind of project's really helpful, because it's providing the technology, but it's also potentially helping the community as well.
So this is where you get, Mum, come on, get with it.
Oh yeah, get with the program. Yeah, I get that all the time. And it's you know, you do need the wireless at home, because you can't have, you know, 3 or 4 kids all queuing up for their spot on the computer, and suddenly it's 10 o'clock at night and someone's still doing their homework. So yeah, it does put an impact on the home, but you know, it's kind of becoming essential because of the rate of change and the way technology is developing in the world, and we've got to prepare our children for that world, and increasingly even the rural sector and agriculture, where, you know, these rural people are living, it's becoming more and more technology based. So our children really need these sorts of skills. So this kind of project that's helping those schools provide that is so important.
Because when I was at school, we weren't allowed biros or calculators.
I know, and you had to wait till you got to high school before you were allowed to use a ballpoint pen. Yeah, I know, all those things.
We didn't have them at high school either. So anyway, I'm a little bit older than you. 13-year-olds and under, and general practitioners. Yes,
the 1st of July, the government now has provided funding for under 13-year-old children to have free GP visits. It's a little bit tenuous because they say they're eligible for it. Doesn't mean they'll necessarily get it, because what has to happen is the GP practice has to sign up to the scheme. Otherwise they don't receive the subsidy to be able to provide the free visit. And Health Minister Jonathan Coleman was very forward the other day and suggesting that, well, if your GP doesn't provide that, then you go shopping for another one. And I thought, well, how incredibly naive. Because
especially in the country.
In the country, you just simply don't have a choice of GP practices. You know, you might have one in your town, and for many rural people, you're travelling 50 k's or more to get to the one you've got. And if they're not providing it, then what do you do?
So the media,
you know,
sort of had
to
a go
just
at
say
it,
that it's eligible and people can have it, you've actually got to make sure that people can have it, and you've got to do more than just make it available. You actually have to then provide it and not just say, well, it's there if people want it. It kind of doesn't work that way.
Because what did he say? If you break a bone, you just got to go around until you find one who will pay for it. You know? But I mean, surely the general practitioners themselves are going to say, well, we've got rocks in our head if we don't.
I think a lot of them have. I mean, there's still one or two, I think about 10 GP practices that haven't signed up to the under 6 free subsidy, and I think a lot of it comes down to whether they can actually afford it, because sometimes a practice will say that, look, it actually costs us more to provide this service than the subsidy is providing, so we can't give it free. So therefore they make the call on whether they will or won't sign up for it based on whether it's actually going to cover their costs. And a lot of GPs say that the subsidy being offered won't cover their costs fully, but they, I guess they subsidise it from within their practice in some other way. The key really is making sure that children can get medical care, because we know that there are families who don't take their children to the doctor because they can't afford it.
Yeah, that's tragic, isn't it?
It is tragic, and children are, you know, they're not getting the care they need, and by the time they do get to care, they're usually in a hospitalised situation, and it's a much bigger problem than if they've been able to actually afford a GP visit to start with.
So what's Rural Women New Zealand doing?
Well, we're wanting to encourage the government to actually provide it to all GPs, irrespective of them having to sign up for this scheme. You know, realistically, if you're saying that it's available, you actually need to provide it instead of just saying, well, you come and get it if you want it. I think that's a bit tough, and particularly for rural sector where there isn't a choice of GP. You can't just go to the next one down the road because there isn't one. And if you're in a town where there's more than one practice, often those practices are so overworked, their registers are so full, you can't change GPs.
And I guess the other thing is that a lot of the GPs will say this is just extra work. I've got to fill out forms.
It's another bit of administration and so on.
And I've got to wait for the money to come back.
Yeah, there's all of that. So we really just want the government to acknowledge that for rural sector it's not as easy as shopping around for another GP, that they have to come up with a much better solution.
I'm sure you're not going to stop. You're going to keep rattling those doors.
Absolutely, we will be.
Gary, thank you very much. So two big things. We've got the GPs under 13 and under, and you've also got the school computers with Hewlett Packard.
Hewlett Packard, and all the information and application forms are on our website, so people can easily get those.
Brilliant, thank you very much indeed. In just a moment, we're talking dairying. How long have you been on this property?
I've been on this property, well, just coming up to the end of our second season. So, yeah, we moved here when the farm was purchased by our farm owners, and we've been share milking here since then.
So you've been overseeing the whole conversion?
No, well, the previous owners converted the farm, so we had, it was 5 years done before we got here. So, yeah, it was pretty much done. We've tweaked a few things as we've seen fit along the way in the last year or two, but pretty much the majority of it was done before we got here.
And cattle numbers?
Cattle numbers, we winter about 1,000. We're going to winter 1,050 this year.
Irrigation, you've got a centre pivot?
Yep, one centre pivot does about 200 hectares, and then there's about 30 odd hectares of K-lines out in the corners. It's a pretty simple system to manage, and good reliable groundwater as well.
I was going to ask you about that because it's been a very dry year.
Yeah, we've probably been pretty fortunate in comparison to a lot of others. You know, all year we've looked outside the window and it's been green, and we've been able to put water on, which is sort of a bit embarrassing reading the local papers of the poor buggers in North Canterbury and South Canterbury. But you know, we haven't got a huge abundance of water to go on a daily rate, but we've got the reliability, and I think that's pretty crucial to this place. So leading into February, March, we weren't right ahead of water, but we're up to date, and then when the odd autumn rain came, we had a great autumn, so it's been really good.
You're obviously feeding in bale.
Yep, we feed grain in the shed all year round. Gets down to quite a minimal amount through the summer, but the spring and the autumn we feed a reasonable amount of grain through the shed.
What's your production? Are you happy with production?
Yep. Production, we're going to do about sort of 480 odd a cow this year, which has come up from 460. It's been a pretty good year really. As I say, if you get warm, dry conditions and you've got water, you're going to grow the grass. Our grass production on the farm has improved a lot with a bit of regrassing we've done. So we've grown a bit more grass this year, and that's proven in the vat as well. So.
Now, you've been involved with the Dairy Awards, and now you're putting a whole lot back into it.
Yeah, yep. 2010 we won the Canterbury Region Share Milker of the Year title, and got runner-up in the New Zealand one, and that gave us the opportunity to meet some great people, and we owe a lot. Well, we owe this share milking job to the competition, and I suppose putting some time back in. We've been on the committee for the last 4 years, and this year we're the regional managers, so we've been basically running the Canterbury region, Canterbury North Otago region, and it's been great. We've really enjoyed the challenge, I suppose, of and meeting the latest and greatest dairy farmers in the industry.
It's a really neat thing, isn't it? Because you actually learn a hell of a lot from other people as well as what your own knowledge was.
You're always learning. Like I'll never know everything, so it's been great to be involved in seeing guys that are coming through with new ideas and and judging that competition. We weren't judging this year, but in the last 3 or 4 years, judging the competition, I think you get some really awesome benefits just through seeing some great ideas and the aspects of how they're farming their operations. It's great.
Your views on education, because I know you're a bit involved with the primary ITO.
Yeah, it's massive. We need to have more people coming through the industry that are going to jump on the bandwagon and such and make their way through from being a junior dairy assistant right through to share milking and then hopefully farm ownership. And I think primary ITO have got a great package there, and there's been a lot done in the last most recent times to try and I suppose improve the level of training that staff are getting, so it's appropriate on farm. And I'm involved in the Dairy Industry Partnership Group, which helps to make sure that's happening on farm, and that farmers are getting, I suppose, what they pay for, and also so that when a new employee comes to your farm, that they say, oh, we've got level 3 in this, and they can actually do all that's involved in that. And whereas in the past it's probably been just a little bit unclear of if
you can actually employ somebody and find out too late that they didn't know enough.
Yeah. So it's just another way of trying to make sure you've ticked every box before you employ someone, I suppose, and it's standardised everything a little bit more. And I think going forward, that's pretty crucial.
Now, Stacey's a major part of the whole operation.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I'm like any guy. I'm no good without someone backing me up, and she's been great from right through from the family side of things right through to the business side, and then the Dairy Awards. She's a massive part of that. She organised all the big awards dinner and stuff. I left that to her. It's her department.
Because you actually had a go in 2010, I understand. You were both in the Dairy Awards, but of an opposite teams.
We were, yeah. We were actually against each other back in 2010, so that was a long-standing joke, but we'll let that one go now.
It'd be better to have her on your side.
Very much so, yeah. No, it's great. We're loving it now. We've been thriving.
Where to from here?
Well, just keep working away. We've obviously, like every share milker, we've got some debt to pay off, and we'll keep working away. And this year we probably won't achieve paying off too much of that debt, but we're in it for the long term. And going forward, it's our aim is to reduce our debt and then look to buy into land, and whether that's in an equity partnership deal or just whatever comes our way in the future, really. But at the moment, we're loving what we're doing. Share milking, 1,000 cow 50-50 jobs are hard to come by, and we won't be giving this one up anytime soon.
And I love your calf sheds.
Yeah, the farm is very well set up. We've got an 80-bale rotary and then about 30 bays of calf sheds on the farm, so it has been really designed well and set up for future expansion, I suppose.
And staying with the subject of animals, we'll be talking animal health, prevention and cure straight after the break.
Be Active begins here in the cold, clean, unpolluted southern oceans of New Zealand. Be Active amino acid biostimulant, natural, 100% pure, manufactured from healthy deep sea fish from sustainable New Zealand fisheries. New Zealand's Be Active amino acid biostimulant, the way the world is growing. Working with nature, good for the plant, good for the planet. Now that's growing for good.
We'll get you thinking, think water.
I think it's all working well, Jack.
My thoughts exactly.
We'll get you thinking, think water.
This is exactly what you need.
I think that'll do the trick.
We'll get you thinking, think water.
It's all looking good. Did you bring the sauce? I can't think of everything.
Think water.
For real ideas and real solutions, just think water.
I've been reporting on farming matters on the radio and newspapers and on television for 40 or so years, but communication, like farming, has moved on. So we've come up with On the Land, online and through YouTube on any screen, anytime and anywhere. Just push play and see and hear what's happening today in our rural community. You'll learn and be informed about the latest and best information farming matters. On the Land, bringing farming information into the 21st century. So join us on our website, ontheland.co.nz.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
Welcome back to On the Land. In just a moment we'll be talking animal health, prevention and cure. Nutrition, very, very important, especially with pregnant and lactating stock.
Yeah, and this year is going to be a cruncher because we've come out of a drought. We've just got a bit of rain, obviously, in the last few days, which is great, but I'm not the expert, but I'm sure that the experts will say that the ground temperatures are still less than optimum for good growth. So, you know, we're probably going from one bad situation to another. And I think there needs to be a lot of thought goes into carrying capacity of land units at the moment. You know, I think it's important to understand just the amount of energy as a primary, but also protein and fat levels that need to be taken into an animal to maintain a pregnancy, and of course then we've got the lactation following that. And so there needs to be some good planning put in place. Yeah, it's just an essential, and we always face problems every year, but I think this year is going to be a real nasty one. So I think people, it's easier to destock before you start getting into trouble than knee-jerking when things have gone far too far down the line.
I guess one of the big things with sheep farmers is to make sure you've got your twins in one mob and singles in another. Absolutely.
So scanning information is really important, and preferentially feeding or target feeding singletons and multiparous animals. That's essential. But I think also understanding a bit of nutritional requirements, and this old sort of chuck a bit of hay out, it's just not going to do the job. Sure, you know, there's adequate fibre there that's going to keep rumen function going, and we're going to produce a little bit of heat, but you know, we're needing, it's much more complex than just energy when we're starting to talk about lactation and also growing a pregnancy. There's protein intake and there's fat intake, as I mentioned before, that needs to be kept in touch with. So, you know, supplemental feed needs to be ascertained. If you don't know the carrying capacity of your land, well then you're going to need to be doing a little bit of research into what growth you can expect, what sort of energy and nutrient content you can expect out of your pasture. And to be honest, if you're flatland, non-irrigated, you know, fairly well draining land in Canterbury, really your midwinter growth is going to be very close to zero, so you're not going to be able to rely on much at all. So,
but you need that rising plane, don't you?
Rising plane of nutrition, it's a very old term, but it's exceptionally true. A rising plane of nutrition, and we're going to get pregnancy toxemias all over the place. And
sleepy sickness.
That's right. That's exactly what the disease is. And I don't care how flash people get to me. Once you start getting used, sitting down with sleepy sickness, it's a one-way spiral.
We used to put glycerine or something in them.
Yes, we still do. We still give them ready access energy supplements, but often, especially if there's a fair length of time to go before the birthing time is up, it's really, really difficult to pull these animals through, and it takes a lot of resource. And to be honest, it's out of the reach of practicality a lot of times. So
it was also known, I think, as twin lamb disease for obvious reasons.
Absolutely.
And so that comes back to your scanning.
That's right. Twin lamb disease, of course, ewes-bearing twins are obviously, their energy requirements and nutritional requirements through pregnancy are obviously greater than a singleton, and so they're much more at risk of pregnancy toxemia if we start getting to the crunch. I guess on top of all this is regular monitoring, and again, it's a thing I harp on about all the time, I understand, but through the winter, especially this winter, it would be essential to keep a good hand on your stock, especially sheep. We know that full-fledged sheep, it's very hard to assess condition unless you can actually feel what's going on over the short rib area, and so running them through some yards and actually at least having a feel and getting a handle on what's happening to their body condition could well prevent some major welfare issues and stock losses later on through the pregnancy or the lactation.
So that's sheep. Cattle are still at risk as well?
Cattle are at risk as well, maybe not as great a risk as sheep. But again, forward planning and feed planning is just as essential to maintain healthy stock. I think one thing that maybe we should talk about that goes hand in hand with these sort of conditions is parasite status, and I think young stock this year are going to be at risk. What happens is we have a stressful summer. Under stress, we have adult animals shedding a lot of parasite eggs into the environment. Then we get a bit of moisture and enough heat, enough temperature to drive larval development, and we can get massive larval populations on grazable pasture. And so in the next 2 to 3, 4 weeks would be a very, very high risk period for bad parasite problems, especially in young stock, hoggets, yearling cattle, these sort of class of stock.
Now the other thing is that if you're feeding brassicas, a lot of veterinarians would say you're feeding poison, so you've got to be a bit careful on that one.
Be careful. They're not as bad as they used to be. There's 2 major problems that we can see with brassica feeding, and we can get problems with a special type of anemia. It's less of an issue these days. One thing that we should be a bit aware about, especially at this time of year, after some poor phases of growth and then getting a little bit of growth with the moisture, is nitrate poisoning, and that's something that definitely should be thought about. And if we start getting animals falling down with that, then that's one of the big things high on the list to be thinking about. It's really important to keep a very close eye on your stock. If you think they're breathing a bit heavy, if we're getting a bit of air blowing when you're moving stock, and maybe they're a bit tired than you thought they would be when you're moving them around, then it might be worth looking at that before we get any losses.
There'd be nothing more expensive than a dead dairy cow when you're winter grazing, I would have thought.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And as we always say, prevention's much better adage than cure. So very good forward planning, a good animal health.
Put a straw in their gut first?
Yeah, if there's high risk, if you're grazing high risk crop or high risk feed, then yeah, fill them up a little bit first, and maybe look at break feeding if it's a high risk crop. We would generally ascertain that based on the nitrate levels of the feed material being used. So again, I think it's something that the best advice would be, when it comes to good preventative animal health planning, always do it if you can in conjunction with your vet. Develop a relationship with him or her, and it's always the best going forward, I think.
Of course, we've got ticks this time of year.
Ticks,
which has got nothing to do with lactating and pregnancy, but...
Ticks, a funny little thing, yeah. It's traditionally in Canterbury, where we are right now, hasn't really been a major problem ever. And just recently I've learnt that there's been at least a couple of outbreaks up in Kaikoura, one in a herd of calves and one in a herd of deer. So yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on, and especially there's a new parasite, blood parasite, that we've seen raise its head in the North Island called Tyleria, and that has been seen down here, and we've wondered how that's been spread because we didn't think the tick vector was there, and now of course we've had this proven. So I think, you know, yeah, very important to keep an eye out for these things as well, mainly for disease transmission, but we can get problems with blood loss just from the ticks themselves as well.
Brilliant. Nick, thank you very much indeed, as always.
Okay.
I'm Rob Cope-Williams. You've either been watching or you've just missed On the Land, but I will be back at the same time next week. Until then, bye now.